guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with another satisfying tree law story. Before we start, I would just like to say happy birthday to my lovely Patreon Jennifer. It is her 47th birthday today, so let's all say happy birthday in the comments to Jennifer. And now let's dive right into the story. Giant sequoia trees are not a very common sight, even in America, where they are the most abundant and native. Here in the UK though, they are ever less common, and I am, or I guess I was, fortunate enough to have one on my property. I don't really know the history of the tree and how it ended up in a residential area. My best guess is that before homes were built it was all trees, and since they are rare, the homes had to be built kind of around the few of them. They don't have the word giant in their name for no reason either, these trees are massive. I recommend looking it up after reading this to try and see for yourself. If you're a person similar to me, you might think that a giant tree is super cool. If you are like my neighbor Karen, you might think that it is horrible. She also had no bad feelings of making her ideals known and trying to make the entire thing my problem. The following is just an example of many conversations we had regarding the matter. Karen, when are you going to finally get rid of that stupid tree? Me, that tree is amazing and also extremely rare. It's not going anywhere, and honestly, it doesn't have anything to do with you. The tree is not on your property. Karen, if it falls down, it would end up on my property. Then you will be in a world of trouble for not getting rid of it. Me, actually, I would not, but aside from that, this is a stable tree. On my property, so you can just stop bringing it up every other week, okay? It's getting old. Karen, well, you know, the shadow is on my property, and that's basically like the tree being on it. So clearly I should get a vote in what happens to the tree. Me, take your vote and send it to yourself in the mail because I don't care. Goodbye, Karen. There were more conversations just as pleasant as that one, but I think that you get the picture. Also, I think you can understand why I decided to call her Karen for this story instead of some other random fill-in for a name. The issues I had with Karen regarding this tree were not something that happened over the course of a few weeks or even a month or two. Oh no, this argument about a tree went on for a good 2 years. 2 years with her not talking to me about anything else except her wanting me to get the thing cut down. When I was going on a vacation with my family to Germany for 2 weeks, you can imagine the joy of just being away from her. Of course, I was excited about a lot more than that, but if you ever got away from an annoying person, you know the feeling. This is not a vacation story, so I won't really go into details, but I will say that I had an amazing time and I felt great afterwards. Stress from work and home got to disappear while I was gone, and my body untensed for the first time in years. That all ended when I came back to see my house crushed under the weight of my sequoia tree. I looked where it was cut and I could tell right away that it was done with a chainsaw and not some act of God. My vacation was not ending with me going home, but instead going to my brother's house to sleep. I could give you all 3 guesses to who was responsible for this, but you would only need one. I knew that Karen did this and was already starting to get everything in order. I would need to sue her. Since it was not done by a storm, my insurance did not want to pay for home repairs. I then called in a tree expert to examine and give a professional statement that it was cut down and to estimate the worth. I knew that these trees were rare, but I had no idea that this tree was worth upwards of $400,000. And by the way guys, as with most stories that I read, I usually convert the currency to US dollars simply to make it easier for everyone. Just so you're not confused, because the story takes place in the UK, but you see dollars in the story. Anyway, I was suddenly very thankful that I installed cameras on my house about a year before this. It didn't get much, but it showed Karen clear as day on my property right before the tree smashed into the house. The cameras broke on impact, but the footage got saved online, so I was able to retrieve it. That was not the end of the lawsuit against Karen though, because that huge amount of money did not take into account the fact that my house was destroyed. For that, I needed to get some records of what the house was worth, and it was roughly the same amount as the tree. By the time the lawsuit was getting sent to Karen, she was being sued for $850,000. I think the huge amount was an advantage for us because she was so focused on that she didn't even think to deny or defend her actions. She did not want to deal with just us and the lawyers and wanted the thing to go to court. She really thought the tree was not worth anything and would get away with paying nothing if she went to court. She talked about trees just being wood, and the idea of one kind of tree being better was just made up BS. She also said that trees are worthless and she can go and buy a sapling for $50 and it would be the same. She also sprinkled throughout were comments of the tree being a disturbance and me refusing to do anything about it. Instead, she flat out admitted to coming onto my property with hired help and trying to get rid of the tree. Then it fell on the house, which she also decided shouldn't be her responsibility. She had the nerve to say that my home should have been sturdier since I knew the big tree was on the land. Nothing she said helped, and her lawyer wanted her to shut up the entire time. She kept making it worse for herself. Also, the help that she got could not be tracked down because it was not an actual company. It was just some big guys she found and offered to pay in cash to help her get rid of a tree that she probably told them was on her property. I could not blame them for getting out of there once it fell. Karen was forced to pay me everything and would need to get rid of her assets in order to do that. This included her car, her house, and her savings. Some might see me as evil for taking everything she had, but she should not have done what she did. Her selling the house made me happy because it meant that I might get a normal neighbor and she could move far, far away from me. Somewhere I would never need to see her again. My entire house had to be rebuilt, and it took a bit to find a company willing to work with that breed of tree and get it off my property. In the end, I'm happy with how my house turned out, but I do miss that giant tree giving me shade and just its beauty. It felt cool to have something special, but now that it's gone, I cannot have that anymore. A little bittersweet, but I can just cry into my money and look into planting something else where it once stood. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am so glad that Karen had to pay that massive fine, and I hope she never does something like this again. I guess she learned the consequences of tree law. Anyway, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled, No, I Won't Open the Door. My male 41 wife, Becky, female 39, is planning on traveling abroad to visit her sister and her family in the next few days. She will be gone for the next 2.5 weeks, and over the past year, my wife has become very good friends with our neighbor Emily, female 37, who lives a few houses down the road. Long story short, Emily makes me feel uncomfortable, and I think she's trying to make a move on me. At first I thought she was joking and I didn't think much of her behavior, but now it only makes me feel uncomfortable. Earlier today, Becky told me that she chatted with Emily and mentioned how she would be going overseas for a few weeks. She said that Emily offered to come by and drop off some food for us, myself and our 11-year-old daughter Alice, from time to time. Becky was reluctant to agree, but after Emily insisted, she finally agreed. I was surprised that she would agree to this without consulting me first, so I told her that it made me feel uncomfortable. Becky said that Emily means well and it would be rude if we were to refuse now. I said okay, but that she shouldn't be surprised if Alice and I forget to open the door every time Emily comes knocking. Becky said that I was being a jerk to someone offering us kindness. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Was OP an a-hole here or not? Let us know. Comment number 1, not the a-hole. Flip the script and ask your wife if she would be okay with you telling your best mate that he can stop by even if you knew he was interested and made her uncomfortable. Ask her if she would be okay with the guilt if you turned out to be right. Good partners don't allow their SOs to feel out of place in their own home. Don't negotiate, tell her Emily is not to check on you, you're a grown man and a capable husband. End of discussion. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. It does not matter why she makes you feel uncomfortable, the fact is that she does make you uncomfortable and your wife seems to care more about being rude than about you feeling safe in your own home. And Ripe Stars, thankfully we have an update. It reads like this. Early this morning, I spoke to Becky about my concerns regarding Emily's behavior. She said that Emily doesn't have any ulterior motives and only means well. She also brought up how Emily has her own husband and always tells Becky how great he is. For some more context, Emily is married, but her husband is not home too much as he works in the military. When I asked if she could tell Emily that we don't need food deliveries, she said it would be awkward to mention it right before her trip and how it would only be once or twice a week. Another thing Becky mentioned that has only increased my uneasiness is that Emily had given her a spare house key just in case of emergencies or anything like that. For those wondering, my wife is leaving a few hours past midnight tonight. Context for clarification regarding the key. Emily gave my wife her own house key but doesn't have the key to our home. Some more context. For those wondering what Emily does, I can tell you that she does a lot of unnecessary physical contact, like hugging me whenever she sees me, which did not bother me the first few times but increasingly makes me feel uneasy. Not only that, but she has made very suggestive comments in the past. I would also add that the way she dresses and her body language when she comes to our house seems to be a bit flirtatious. Based on the past few months, I'm fairly certain that she is trying a move based on how she's been acting and what she has said. Maybe she's only trying to be nice and I'm overthinking, nonetheless the whole situation makes me uncomfortable. Off the top of my head, I can tell you that she does a lot of unnecessary physical contact, makes very suggestive comments, and the way she dresses when she comes to our home when I'm home also makes me uncomfortable. Update number 2, I would like to thank everyone who responded to my first post. I've taken the advice suggested multiple times in the comments and I've installed a doorbell camera the day after my wife had left home. Fortunately, nothing had really happened so far, so I didn't really see much of a need for an update until recently. Without further ado, here's the update. For the past few days, things have been pretty quiet. I've been enjoying spending quality time with my daughter Alice. She attends a summer day camp during my working hours, but we've been spending every evening and the past weekend together watching movies, going on walks, playing video games, etc. My wife Becky had planned on teaching Alice how to cook this summer, but since that's yet to come, I've taken the opportunity. I think Alice is a natural, she picks up instructions quickly and we've been having a lot of fun. The day before yesterday, our neighbor Emily came to drop off some food as she had told Becky that she would. I did open the door as I decided to just accept once to be polite, but I let her know that she didn't need to worry herself with any other deliveries as my daughter and I would be cooking. She was acting normally until the very end, where she said something along the lines of, "If there's anything else I can do for you, please let me know," she said in a very flirtatious tone. I thanked her and told her that I appreciated the gesture but reiterated that we would be able to manage on our own. She then said, "Well, if you crave anything else, just let me know." Just think of it as a substitute for Becky. This made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, mainly because of the tone she said it in. The next morning, yesterday, Alice and I were rushing to go to camp and work. Emily popped out from nowhere and started telling me how her driveway was being resurfaced and she needed somewhere to put her car for the next few days. She asked if she could place it in our driveway and I agreed, as Alice and I were in a rush and because she dropped off the food the previous night. As I was driving away, I was mentally kicking myself as now she would have a reason to hang around our home. Later that day, I was home doing some chores in our garage when Emily pulled up in her car, mentioning again how her driveway was being resurfaced. I could see that it was indeed the case. We had a bit of small talk, but at some point, she went into a tirade about her husband. She shared how she sometimes felt unappreciated by him sometimes and how they don't get to spend time together. I didn't say too much during this, only that I felt sorry that she felt that way. I glanced at my phone and then pretended that Alice was texting me to come pick her up. It was close enough to her time anyway. I said goodbye and locked up my house, and yesterday evening was largely uneventful and I'm looking forward to spending more time with my kid. Update number 3, I wanted to give a quick update on what's been happening since my last post. Becky will be back in a few days Friday night and I didn't want to disrupt her trip or make her worry, so I've spared her most of the Emily details until she arrives. From speaking with Becky, however, I have learned that her sister does not like Emily at all. Becky told me that she was pretty upset about the arrangement and that she thinks Becky is overly trusting. Aside from that, things have been largely quiet this week. Emily's driveway has been completed, so she has taken her car back. I have not seen much of her since then. Update number 4. Hey everyone, it's been a pretty wild 24 hours. I'll give a quick recap of what's been happening. Since Becky was coming home last night, Alice and I spent most of the day tidying up. In the late afternoon, I decided to mow our lawn as it was about time to do so. In the past, I have occasionally mowed Emily's lawn, shoveled her driveway, etc. I do this because her husband has done this for us before, so I've always thought that this was just paying them back. Becky has also asked me to do this a few times in the past. However, because of what's been going on, I figured it would not be a good idea and I purposely mowed our lawn when her car was away so that I could return to my house discreetly. After putting away our mower, I saw Emily's car pull into her driveway. Just as I was about to go inside, she called out to me. She asked when Becky would be back and I told her that Becky's flight was scheduled to arrive tonight and she seemed happy about that. It was a humid day and I was sweating a bit. She mentioned that I looked hot. May not have meant it that way, but with her I never know, and suggested that Alice and I should drop by for drinks. I thanked her for the offer but explained that I couldn't and the conversation mostly ended there. Becky arrived home last night a few hours after midnight and was very exhausted from her flight. After I brought her some food, we were only able to talk a bit about her trip before she went to bed. I planned on discussing Emily and showing her the video the next day once she had rested, but she was still asleep in the morning and I had to run errands. This is where things got complicated. After finishing my errands, I went home to spend time with Becky and tell her about the video. When I got home, Alice had already gone out with her friends, so it was just Becky and me. Becky seemed upset, so I asked her what was wrong. She told me that after waking up, she received a text from Emily welcoming her back and inviting her over. Becky agreed and went to Emily's house. She noticed that Emily's living room was messier than usual, but what bothered her more was a pair of men's exercise shorts on the sofa. They looked identical to a pair I had, and I say had because those shorts went missing about a month ago. There was also what Becky thought was a condom wrapper on the floor next to it. During their conversation, Emily talked a lot about how kind I've been to her and how much we talked while Becky was away. Emily even suggested that Becky should have extended her stay at her sister's so she could continue looking after Alice and me. At that point, Becky excused herself and went home. She mentioned that she felt overwhelmed and almost sick. She told me that she came home panicking about what Emily might have meant, so she spoke with her sister. Her sister called BS on Emily's claims as everything seemed too conveniently placed, which calmed Becky down. After sharing all this with me, she asked about my contact with Emily during her absence. I told her about the food, the car, and the conversation from the previous day. Then I showed her the video. Becky was stunned and said that Emily was blatantly trying to flirt with me. After watching it, she said she felt sick about all her interactions with her. The main issue still bothering us is the shorts. I had an identical pair that went missing. We are unsure if the shorts Becky saw are mine or if Emily bought the same pair for her little stunt. As I mentioned before, Emily has been to our house, so it's not impossible for her to have taken them. However, we have a lack of proof of this. Considering how Emily gave my wife her own house key before she left, it all seems very well thought out. Also, we are increasingly starting to suspect that her husband may be okay with what she's doing. Becky plans to return the key in the next few days. So far, nothing else seems to be missing, but as we go on with our daily lives, maybe we'll notice something missing. We currently have a cat and I'll gauge my wife's opinion on getting a dog. If my daughter heard, I'm sure she would love the idea. The doorbell camera has really proven its worth, and in addition to the cameras we already had, every angle outside our house is covered. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Farmer built a 25-foot hay tower after entitled city neighbor cut down his hedge and damaged his property. Hey everybody, my friend told me about all the stories regarding farmers being posted lately and thought that everyone would love to hear what happened between me and my neighbor. Next to my land used to be another farm, but with rough times it closed and the plot of land went up for sale. Some guy in the city decided he was going to buy the land to expand. See, this guy already had a business and the only thing between it and my land was that farm lot. When he bought it, he basically just got to expand, and before he even did anything, I knew that this guy was an entitled jerk that really did not care about anyone else around him. I swear the only good parts of my day were when his business was closed and he went back into the city to sleep. Just to give a little example of why I hate this guy so much, I'm going to tell you all a conversation that I had with him. Now, this is actually the first time I ever met the guy, and it was right after he decided to buy the land next to mine. Him: "Hello, my name is Name and I own business. I just purchased the land next to you and I was wondering if you were interested in selling." Me: "Listen, I'm not selling my property." He did not seem to like that answer and instead continued talking. Him: "I could really put this land you are living on to some good use for my business. And this way you get money and can afford to move somewhere else without any financial difficulties." Me: "My land is being put to good use now, growing crops and raising livestock. I'll say it again, I'm not interested and you are not getting my land." Him: "Well, don't come crawling to me looking for a handout when you go broke, and I swoop in and buy the land for half of what I would now." I closed the door in his face and could not imagine the nerve that this guy had. The first time meeting me, and instead of acting like a neighbor, he tried to make me sell him my land. I know that for this story I call him a neighbor, but honestly, I feel like that word should be used for someone that has even a little bit of respect for you. Anyway, I knew that it could only go downhill from there, and it was not the first or last time I would have issues with this guy. For starters, it was not the first conversation we would have about him trying to get me to sell him my land. The second thing was that for a while he was using the empty farm lot as extra parking for people coming to his business. Now that he was expanding though, he needed new places to park and for a while encouraged customers to park on my land. I put up signs that anyone that parked there for his business would be getting towed, and that seemed to put a quick stop to it. Finally, things came to a boil when he decided that the land he got just wasn't good enough and needed to encroach onto my property. I don't have a traditional fence around my land, and instead I opted for a more natural and green approach to using a hedge to separate the properties. I was proud of that hedge, honestly, and I put a lot of work into making sure that it was neat and presentable. Imagine my shock when I see one day that half of it was just gone. I was furious. I can see the person that is doing it, and I run up to him yelling at him about destroying my hedge. He explains that neighbor hired him to remove it and claimed that it was from the old farm property and did not know it was mine. He stopped at that point, but half of my hedge was just gone and I was not going to sit down and take it. I could see my neighbor looking at me really smug and knew that he knew it was my hedge and he was not done trying to mess with me. He built one of those tall advertisement signs so that people can see it from the main road, and it would basically tell them that his business was there. He took down my beautiful hedge to replace it with a giant metal advertisement. Since it was on his property though, I could not do anything about the sign. Also, I was told that suing him for the hedge was possible, but courts were backed up for things like that and it would take a while to get anything done. I was left with only one option, and that was to teach this guy from the city that messing with people out here is a bad idea. I thought about trying to put some new shrubbery in or something, so the giant hole between properties wouldn't exist, but then I got a much better idea. On the other side of my farm were bales of hay lined up that were going to be the feed for the livestock in the winter. Looking at it though gave me a crazy idea, and I knew what I was going to do. Since they were flat and basically looked like giant bricks made of hay, they could stack on each other easily. They were also heavy enough that even stacked, they were not a danger of getting blown away by the wind. I started my plan and I took them over to where his sign was, but on my side of the property, and started stacking away. After about 25 feet of stacking hay bales, I thought it looked good enough and went to get my truck for the final test. I got out on the main road and drove down, keeping an eye out. I could see my stack of hay and it was totally blocking the neighbor's business sign. Nobody could see it and he was not going to get any business from the main road like he wanted to. As you can imagine, he came over and started yelling at me that he was going to sue me and destroy me. I calmly told him that it was on my property and as a farmer I needed to have hay. I also needed to block the area of the hedge that got destroyed so my animals could stay safe. That last part was not true because they were safe in their own areas on the other side of the farm, but he did not need to know that. I know that if he got a lawyer, he was going to hear the same thing I did about the courts being backed up, and that technically I can do what I want on my side of the property. There were no laws about how high you can stack your bales of hay either, so I knew I was not doing anything illegal. I know that when things finally get to it, the courts will try to make us come to some agreement. In the meantime though, I get to enjoy seeing my giant wall of hay every time I have business that takes me on that main road. I can see that he also is not getting the kind of business that he wants to, because people that don't know the area are going to go to the places that they see the signs for as they are driving. I was never going to sell him my property anyway, but I think by the time this entitled city guy is done fighting with me, he wouldn't have the money if he wanted to. Maybe threats are how people in the city do business, but around here, kindness goes a long way. If you want to act entitled and piss off a farmer, well, then you're going to have to deal with him building a wall of hay between you two. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.